Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. You go up to the left, you go up to the right, you go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of the story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. You go up to the left, you go up to the right, you go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of the story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
Is my mic hot? I think my mic's hot. All right, so let's get into it. January 1st, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan on How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, to let everybody know, aside from, we made it. We made it 2021. But before I do get started, we do try to keep it family friendly here on How the Frack We Got Here, so language will be limited as far as the use of cuss words. However, videos we may be showing today may be of a graphic nature, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. Well, we back. Like I said, guys, we are back from our hiatus. So all podcasts will be resuming as of today, and I do thank you all who have already watching and sharing this. I certainly appreciate that, guys. And like I said, it's amazing that I sat there and decided a while back to take the holidays off from podcasting, and why on the times when I decide I don't want to do a podcast that all the news decides to come up. So we're going to try to do our best to not only cover this week, but the previous week, and man, there's a lot. But unfortunately, we have to start with some news surrounding a specific case we've been following, and it just doesn't seem like it's not getting any better.
2 Cleveland police officers will not face federal charges in the shooting death of 12-year-old Tamir Rice, an encounter that helped galvanize the Black Lives Matter movement. Video from the November 2014 incident shows Officer Timothy Lohman shooting Rice seconds after Lohman and Officer Frank Garnback arrived on scene. Rice was holding a pellet gun. The officers say they mistook the toy for a real gun. We spoke to the boy's mother, who says her son deserves justice.
So I'm just appalled right now and disappointed and hurt.
Samaria Rice says the Justice Department's decision to not prosecute the officers for her son Tamir Rice's death is inexcusable and unjust.
I should have an indictment and a conviction for my 12-year-old son.
The 2014 shooting was caught on camera outside a Cleveland recreation center. A 911 caller had alerted police about a, quote, guy pointing a gun at people and said the person was probably a juvenile and the gun was probably fake. That information was never transmitted to the officers who responded. One opened fire on 12-year-old Rice seconds after they arrived. In statements following the shootings, both officers said they thought Rice was pulling out a real gun from his waistband and claimed they gave him multiple commands to show his hands. In a statement Tuesday, the Justice Department said prosecutors found insufficient evidence to support federal criminal charges against the officers. They say the video is grainy, shot from a distance, adding that Tamir's hands are not visible during the relevant time.
It was clear as day to me. My son was scared when they rolled up on him. They didn't even give him a chance to respond.
Rice's lawyer, Subodh Chandra, says the video tells the whole story.
He rushed upon a child, got out of the car, and fired his weapon immediately. And you can tell that from the video. There's no pausing, there's no deliberation, there's no calling out warnings, there's nothing.
In 2015, a state grand jury also declined to indict the officers, sparking protests around the country.
The Rice family, not only have they lost a child, which is bad enough, but they have been deprived of a fair process time and again.
America will never give me no closure, or any other family that has to go through this if they don't break this system.
Officer Lohman was fired nearly 3 years after Rice's death for lying on his application. The family is demanding more information after an October New York Times report that DOJ supervisors denied career prosecutors' 2017 request to use a grand jury to gather evidence in their investigation.
It's just still so hard when you think of.
And that is exactly right. She's right. But the simple fact of the matter that Tamir Rice was actually one of the many cases out there and the many names that we keep saying. And yet the Justice Department, which unfortunately is still ran by William Barr, had decided that they had insufficient evidence to move forward with bringing up federal criminal charges. I failed to see how. Concerning the fact by their own admission that they shot Tamir Rice, who again didn't have a weapon, who didn't appear threatening. But again, it's the same situation we keep hearing multiple times. And yet it seems that law enforcement, and yes, I'm going to talk about law enforcement because I always talk about law enforcement. Reason being is because, well, the good ones are never there. I said the bad ones get promoted and the good ones get replaced or fired or moved or excused. Call me wrong if you want to. But again, with Tamir Rice, it's just sad that, again, this is one of the many stories where we keep hoping that justice will finally find us. It doesn't, which is why I see a lot of people are disillusioned and franchised when it comes to the Ahmaud Arbery case, to the Breonna Taylor case, to really a lot of the police cases that are currently out there right now. Because a lot of people are going to sit there and say that they're going to try to find a way to make sure the cops don't get warranted. Except, when they shoot a white person and then they get the book thrown at them and put them in prison, because it has happened before. So again, it's like, of course, it's not the end. We will still keep following this and other stories, but it just, when you're getting told there's insufficient evidence and you no longer have a child, and officers can just seem to have a license to kill on black people. I'm sorry, it's just a little hard to feel for law enforcement when something happens to them. It's a little difficult. I mean, it's almost to the point of, it's really almost to the point to where I'm not saying we should be desensitized to it, which means that we're becoming numb. But at the same time, it's almost like, again, when law enforcement gets, harassed or, beat down, I'm not saying it's wrong. Of course it's wrong. But it's a little hard to feel sorry for them. It really is. At least in my case to me. But moving right along, guys, like I said, we're trying to cover the last 2 weeks of what we missed. Apparently there's treason in the House of Representatives. Mainly put, because I still cannot believe we're saying this, folks are still trying to fight for Dorito.
Republican Senator Josh Hawley to challenge the election started out as a push from just one senator, but it appears to be picking up steam. I'm hearing that it could be as much as a handful of Republican senators. Our colleague Jake Tapper is hearing perhaps as many 140 House members. Will this challenge go anywhere despite the numbers growing here?
Well, no, because under the rules, both chambers, the House and the Senate, would have to agree that on a Trumpian slate of delegates. That obviously is not going to happen in the House of Representatives, and there aren't even a majority of votes in the U.S. Senate to have it. So no, that won't go anywhere.
And despite that, you have these members of Congress, though, going forward with this. What does this say about your party tonight, Ben?
Well, nothing good. I think they probably see it as a freebie vote, which is extremely short-sighted for the future of the party. But they see that the Democrats in the House and enough Republican senators will save them from having to be in the unprecedented and unprincipled position of actually overturning the popular.
Okay, so it makes sense of what y'all just watched. There has been slated that two members, Republican members of the House of Representatives, have sat there and said not only themselves, but at least 140 other House Republicans will vote against counting electoral votes. For all those that don't know, the last part of the process of the transition of powers to the next president is just that the House and the Senate must count the electoral votes as a final way of confirmation. This is nothing more than a simple formality that has been done since the beginning of our democracy. And House Republicans, who still believe that Trump should have won and that he did win because somehow there was massive voter fraud in which they couldn't claim or couldn't prove, said that the election was rigged, but they couldn't find any evidence of it being rigged. And somehow the voter machines, which again also by conspiracy folks and crazy nuts, either way, the actual comment that they give to this is that they're trying to vote against it. There is no chance, folks. I mean, when it comes down to it, Dorito has lost. His days are limited. And I do mean limited because about a couple of weeks or so, he's no longer going to be president. And boy, is there a lot of folks ready to get him. At the same time, this is one of those last draws that that just some individuals can't accept. Which I find it funny. It comes from mostly people who voted for Trump. Trump was screwed. Why? Because he said so? Yes. So you just believe anything Trump says? Yes. And yet they wonder why I say, Edwin, if you really want to take down a population, aim for education first. But like I said before, with this thing, it's merely just a formality. It still will be counted. President-elect Joe Biden will still be president, and Kamala Harris will still be VP. After all is said and done. Like I said, this is just a Hail Mary that literally goes nowhere. Even more so that this was also involved as well.
Pushing back against a last-ditch effort by Republicans to get him to overturn President-elect Joe Biden's victory. Now, Pence is asking a federal judge to throw out a lawsuit from Texas Republican Congressman Louis Gohmert that threatens to force Pence to ignore the electoral votes of several key states. And it all comes down to next Wednesday when Congress meets to count those votes. CNN contributor Michael D'Antonio joins us. He co-authored a book about the vice president titled...
I just want to stop it there because the rest of it goes into something else. But yes, even the most ineffective vice president we've ever had in history has also been asked because, again, for all those that didn't know, the vice president is actually over the Senate. So therefore, as the Senate in the House is still counting votes, it will also include the VP just because he is presiding over the Senate to basically go ahead and confirm the counting of the votes. In which now they're trying to rope him into this, saying that he should not do the count. Again, this is all but the last dance. It's the last dance for Dorito. And don't get me wrong about Dorito. Dorito has proved one thing. If you can tap into the ignorance and racism of a lot of people and use that to get you elected, go for it. Because again, you guys got to remember, he got an overwhelming amount of people to vote for him over Hillary, who, despite how you feel about her, was qualified. And he managed to get almost a lopsided victory over Hillary Clinton. And even so, when he was running against Joe Biden, he still got a decent amount of people to still vote for him. So it's not too far off beyond the hill to think that people still think he was a great president. Almost in the same sense how Kentucky still voted for Mitch McConnell, and Kentucky is the greatest welfare state in the U.S. And McConnell's the richest senator in the Senate. Go figure. But again, with also another thing that was also crazy about Dorito these couple of weeks was the fact that he actually agreed with the Democratic effort to pass $2,000 relief payments. Again, this is still amazing.
Attacking his own party over the $900 billion COVID relief package. The president saying unless Senate Republicans have a death wish, they will approve the $2,000 stimulus checks being pushed by him and the Democrats. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin says the first $600 checks are going out tonight, but will they be increased? ABC senior national correspondent Terry Moran is in Washington tonight. Terry, walk us through this.
Well, Tom, right now it doesn't look good for those bigger checks. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell came to the Senate floor and he personally blocked a move to get those checks sent out to Americans. This is even after the Democrats and 44 Republicans passed the bill in the House, a bipartisan majority, and after, as you say, President Trump is demanding the Senate move and firing off furious tweets at McConnell and other Republican leaders. Many Republicans say the nation just can't afford the bigger checks right now. So McConnell is trying to sabotage this bill, essentially, by adding poison pills, a committee on election fraud, and stripping Twitter and Facebook and other companies of liability protections. The Democrats aren't going to go for that. The bottom line, another stalemate in Washington while so many Americans are hurting. Tom?
And that was the crazy part. Now, I wish I actually had the video of the speech that Trump did over the $900 billion relief package. Because for the first 30 seconds of that, and I timed it, for the first 30 seconds of that press conference that he did, he sounded like a president. $600 checks to people is a disgrace. What is everything else that's included in this bill that we don't actually need? This is supposed to be a relief package bill, and yet we're seeing everything else in the sun. And for 30 seconds, he sounded like a traditional president. And then it's almost as if the medicine wore off and he went back to his normal self. It's not anybody's fault, it's China's fault. And we're back. But he does bring up a wonderful point. He brings up the fact of the matter is that, yes, in this $900 billion care relief package bill, none of it seems to really be directed toward Americans. I mean, even I have to give it to Trump. I had to give it to Trump or give it to somebody who's done the research for him. I'm almost certain it's the latter. That they sat there and said, how come this much money goes to Israel? How much this much money goes to foreign aid? How much money, do we go to counting fish in a lake somewhere? And he points all this out, and I cannot argue with him. Even more so, like I said, Georgia. I cannot stress this enough for my Georgia people right now. We hope Kentucky will get rid of Mitch McConnell for us. And let's be honest, it's Kentucky. It's kind of take your pick. And I'm not blaming all of Kentucky, because there are a lot of people in Kentucky that dislike Mitch McConnell as much as the rest of the U.S. does. So I'm not knocking all of Kentucky. I'm knocking only the ones that voted for Mitch McConnell, because those are the ones that'll shoot themselves in the foot and reload. So Georgia, we humbly, when I say Georgia, I mean black women, because let's be honest, you guys are the difference makers. But Georgia, we are asking you again to save us. Because right now in Georgia, if you are in Georgia, again, coming about, by Tuesday of next week, you guys will have your Senate race-off voting. For the simple fact of the matter, it is imperative that, we do have Democrats win. Because the reason why we need that to happen is just because it basically unseats Mitch McConnell. And what I mean by that is, McConnell will not have the ability to be the wall. Keep in mind, I have been saying this for almost going on 3 years now. The most powerful seat in Washington is not the presidential office. No, it's the Senate Majority Leader. Now, why is that important? Because for all those that may not remember, I will gladly remind you, the House themselves write the bills, but the Senate, you do need the Senate to make them a law, to override the president. And if you're the Senate Majority Leader, you can prevent bills from coming to the Senate floor to be voted on. Why? Because Mitch McConnell to this day has blocked almost 3,000 plus bills that have never hit the Senate floor, including the stimulus check, which again, like I said before, keep in mind, Mitch McConnell has blocked confirmations of Supreme Court judges, of attorney generals. Keep in mind, he's blocked this for Democrats. But on the flip side, for Republicans, he's fast-tracked them. In this term alone, he has fast-tracked 2 Supreme Court picks. You remember Brett Kavanaugh? You remember Amy Coney Barrett? Keep in mind, those are 2 Supreme Court picks. One that he rushed through after RGB was barely in the ground. Think about that for a second. That's the ability of the Senate Majority Leader. You can stop bills from coming through, or you can ramrod them on in, because that's the checks and balances of our system. And Mitch McConnell has basically made his millions off that. If you really want to be honest, Mitch McConnell is kind of like the evil villain that you just wish you can get a hold of, but yet somehow his slippery ass keeps on getting down the road. That's who he reminds me of. And now, Georgia, you guys have the ability to finally give this man his pink slip. I'm hoping it happens. I'm hoping it happens. I like Osloff and I like Reverend Warlock. I like them both. I just hope that Georgia does the right thing and actually gives us the 2 Democratic senators we need, because nothing will put a better smile on my face than having Kamala Harris be the tiebreaker for the Senate, because it will be if they do get the 2 senators, it will be 50-50 in the Senate, and of course Democrats do have a majority in the House, which would make this the first time in almost 8 years that the Democratic Party would have really total majority. Well, virtually total majority in the White House. But again, I will be interested to see what happens. But again, like I said with Romney, not with Romney, but again, the most biggest thing in the White House so far, like I said before, and also before I do get off this, I have said this before, if you follow my Facebook, $2,000 checks are easy to do. The fact that Mitch McConnell says there's no money, it still amazes me to death that he still thinks that the Democrats, Democrat fat cat friends don't need it. And I say this about conservatives. Conservatives are supposed to be these fiscal budget hawks that want to control spending and reduce the control of government. Yet they want to use government to control everybody else to have them do what they believe is right. I believe that's already an oxymoron and pretty much hypocritical. Because again, if you looked at the $900 billion spending bill, and you kind of take into the fact that the U.S. population is between 328 to 331 million, give or take. Now, if you really think about that, let's just say 328 million. So 328 million times 600, you're probably looking a little over 198 billion. Okay, so 198 billion is going to people to go into American citizens to give them $600. Then they turn around and give $284 billion to the stupid Paycheck Protection Program, which is found to have been corrupt and have given loans to not small business, but large corporations, churches, celebrity companies, and things of that nature. They don't actually go to what they've been designed to go to. But instead of actually closing that program, you actually give it $284 billion. So let me get this straight. You give a crappy plan $284 billion, but you can't give it. But Americans get $198 billion. So you're probably wondering what would happen if Americans did get the $2,000 stimulus check. What would happen? How much would that cost? To be quite honest, it would be. And I was telling people about this because I was kind of going back and doing the math. If every American got a $2,000 check and you still did it to the 328. It would equal up to a little bit over $89 billion, which is just $5 billion more than what they're giving corporations. Amazing. It's like I said, it's amazing to me how they always say there's not more money for anything, and yet we fought multiple wars on credit cards. It sounds to me like the conservative budget hawks of Congress are the ones that actually need an economy lesson. Anyway, moving right along, guys. Like I said, with stuff that's going on, again, California just seems to be the growing epicenter of the coronavirus, because even though we are in a new year, we are still dealing with it.
Nurse Tony Catano says her hospital is running out of oxygen tanks and space in the morgue.
Our morgue is full. It's only a matter of time before they start breaking up the butcher trucks.
Throughout the pandemic, she's used her social media to warn residents of what's to come if the current trend of COVID cases continues.
10 hours later, and there's still just as many ambulances. They don't stop coming.
Cases in the state have surged in spite of strict COVID-19 protocols, including a stay-at-home order. While California's Governor Gavin Newsom pushed for a lockdown in parts of the state, shutting down theme parks, limiting dining at restaurants, and shuttering movie theaters to flatten the curve. Meantime, in Florida, a state that's been wide open for months, things are still faring better per rate of new COVID cases. Why? Public health experts say Los Angeles was uniquely susceptible to an infectious disease outbreak.
Los Angeles County, I think, is home to some of the most overcrowded housing setups in the country. And because of that, you're seeing a lot of household transmission of the virus. There are high rates of poverty and high rates of homelessness.
California's large population means many are suffering from poverty or homelessness. The widening gap of COVID cases present in California is also a stark reminder that many essential workers there are people of color. The rate at which people are getting sick, especially Latino residents, is most alarming.
Por favor, haga su parte.
California's Department of Health says 47% of the COVID-related deaths are Latino, despite Latinos making up just 38.9% of California's population. Since the Thanksgiving holiday, California has continued to set daily record highs in hospitalizations and COVID-related deaths. As of Tuesday, the 7-day rolling average of new cases is up by more than 37,000. That's more than a 13% increase in new positive cases in the past week. Since the start of the pandemic, more than 24,000 people have died in California, and now with hospitals flooded and airports packed, California is becoming the next epicenter of the pandemic.
I think that January and February are going to be really dark.
I think we're all pretty tired.
And I mean, you can't blame them. Like I said, California is unfortunately one of those sites that if you look at the COVID map, is slowly becoming a black site. And the reason why, like I said before, we just can't seem to follow instructions like staying at home.
Tonight, with Americans heading home from holiday travel and family get-togethers, concerned those gatherings are contributing to the growing national COVID catastrophe.
Well, I'm going to be as safe as I can, but I felt like it was important to see family.
Nearly 10 million Americans flew in the past 10 days, despite pleas to stay home, a record during the pandemic that's deadlier now than ever before.
As we get into the next few weeks, it might actually get worse.
Dr. Anthony Fauci warning of a surge to come, in part due to holiday travel.
When you're dealing with a baseline of 200,000 cases, new cases a day, and about 2,000 deaths per day, with the hospitalizations are over 120,000, we're really at a very critical point.
And the holiday season isn't over yet. Today, New York City installed its iconic crystal ball that draws millions to Times Square each year. Though this year's ball drop will be closed to the public, the CDC urging Americans to stay home on New Year's Eve. As the nation's hospitals buckle under the weight of COVID patients flooding the system. In California, now the epicenter of the pandemic, ICU capacity is at 0%.
My concern is really resources. Are we going to have the resources to take care of our community?
Throughout the state, some hospitals now postponing elective and non-urgent surgeries. It's a race against time to get frontline workers vaccinated. So far, nearly 2 million have received the first dose, including Dr. Hussein Sadrazodeh in Boston. He appears to be the first to have had a severe reaction to the Moderna vaccine, using his own EpiPen on himself.
But I think that people need to get vaccinated, and at the same time, I really would like Moderna and also Pfizer to investigate this more to prevent things from happening.
And Megan joins us now from Los Angeles. So, Megan, how big could this post-Christmas surge potentially be?
Well, Kate, with the likely holiday travel surge grim weeks ahead, the CDC now predicting that the U.S. could surpass 400,000 deaths by mid-January.
And like I said before, we just can't seem to follow instructions. Now, I get it. 2020 has cooped us up. I will be the first to admit it. It has cooped us up. You want to be able to go outside beyond your backyard and things of that nature. I cannot knock you for that. But traveling at a time where we still have high cases, we're not like New Zealand and Australia where they have virtually zero cases. We still have some fairly high amounts of things to deal with. However, the curveball in all this is now we have something new.
And thought to be more contagious has been found in the U.S. for the first time. Officials say the patient is a man in his 20s who lives in rural Colorado and has no recent travel history. It's one more problem in the middle of a massive end-of-the-year surge. More than 201,000 new COVID cases were reported yesterday. Wow. Along with a record one-day total of 3,725 deaths. Meg Oliver's in New York City, one of the hardest hit areas. Meg, good morning.
Adriana, good morning. Here in the one-time epicenter of the outbreak, hospitalizations have more than doubled since the beginning of the month, levels not seen since May. And things are looking increasingly grim nationwide as Dr. Anthony Fauci warns the pandemic is out of control.
We're going to have an increase superimposed upon that surge, which could make January even worse than December.
A worse month of coronavirus is hard to imagine, especially in places like Los Angeles County. Daily.
And I mean, I just stopped it there because, like I said, they're just going to kind of repeat what's actually going on in California. But yes, there is a new strain of the COVID-19 variant that has just been discovered. And I know a lot of people right now are going, why take the vaccine? I still say, just like the previous doctor did, that showed two clips ago, you still need the vaccine. Science, I mean, evidence right now for the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are both showing successful rates at 95% and up. That's a pretty good freaking rate. And again, I know I've sat there and said in the past that it's the whole idea of the vaccines and the time it takes to actually get it moving forward. The thing about it is, what's your alternative? And again, this is where I point this out. Even people are gonna say, well, there's a new strain out there. Does that mean we have to get a new vaccine shot? We don't know yet. This is why science is needed, education is needed. Why? Because again, this allows us to actually understand it. Keep in mind, every viral outbreak has went the same steps. Polio has went the same steps. H1N1, the new because there's also a new strain of influenza every year. Viruses, much like us, do evolve and adapt. So this COVID-19 strain, the new strain that's coming out of the UK, is really nothing different. We just need to give those in the medical field time to research it and actually come up with a vaccine. But there's definitely not the time to sit there and speculate like, well, I mean, the vaccine I have, is this going to be able to protect me against this new one? At this point, had everybody followed the instructions from Jump Street, not traveled anywhere, could we have a different outlook? Possibly. But again, it's America, so we shouldn't be surprised that, America's going to do what America always does. I just think so. Fact of the matter is, I know a lot of people have asked me, it's like, well, Will, are you going to take the vaccine? Yeah, I see no problem with it. I see no problem with it because there is, like I said before, I have always said this to everybody else. What's the alternative? You're going to wait it out to see if you just become immune to it on your own? Good luck. But again, with a successful 95% rate, I see nothing wrong with taking the vaccine because, again, despite how you may feel about vaccines, there's not a history of them causing anything but preventing you from getting a disease that probably would have wiped us out if it was left untreated. Just saying. Also, moving right along, there was other news here, especially in my home state of Nashville, where we had a surprise, unfortunately, on Christmas Day. And, well, I'm going to call it what it is. We had a terrorist.
Downtown Nashville, investigators are still trying to determine the motive of 63-year-old Anthony Quinn Warner. This dramatic video showing the RV exploding, shattering windows, damaging more than 40 storefronts, and injuring at least 8 people. None of them seriously. New CNN video from the scene shows the destruction. FBI agents and ATF agents sifting through mountains of debris in the street. Fire alarms still sounding within buildings.
He was not on our radar. He was not someone that was identified as a person of interest for the Bureau. And so we were not familiar with this individual until this incident.
Warner was killed in the blast. Investigators identified him by matching DNA collected at the scene with gloves and a hat found in a vehicle Warner owned. According to authorities, the RV's vehicle identification number recovered from the scene was a key piece of evidence that led them to identify Warner. Authorities searched Warner's home over the weekend. Warner was a computer consultant and said he planned to retire this month, one of his clients told CNN. Neighbor described him as a hermit who sort of kept to himself. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation confirmed that Warner's mother has been cooperating with investigators. Warner's father was once employed by AT&T, and the agency is looking into whether that may be relevant to the motive. AT&T is the parent company of CNN. The RV had been parked outside of an AT&T building in the early hours of Christmas morning. Authorities say when it began to play the song Downtown by Petula Clark and broadcasting an audio message that a bomb would detonate in a matter of minutes. Police initially responded to this scene because of reports of gunfire, but quickly sprang into action and evacuated residents after hearing the RV's message.
I just see orange, and then I hear a loud boom, and as I'm stumbling, because it rocked me that hard.
And Jim, today we got our first look at the scene, the blast site where this RV exploding, and certainly the pictures from that street, from that area, are remarkable. You can see the destruction in all of the buildings, cars that were just melted down, paint melted off of the cars. FBI agents and ATF agents and local officials have been going through debris, looking for evidence. All of this is in an effort to identify what kind of explosive was used here.
There we go. Sorry, a little bit delay on my side. So yes, that did actually happen here Christmas Day. Christmas Day here in Nashville. A couple of things that kind of bother me about that. Aside from the fact that yes, it did put AT&T down for a couple of days. So if you had AT&T in Nashville, I mean, aside from the fact they didn't actually have a good backup plan in place for stuff like this, it did put AT&T customers down for a while. But another thing that killed me about this entire thing was, wait a minute, so guy builds a bomb, puts it in his RV, parks in front of an AT&T building, detonates it. Where in the story can we not say terrorism? I mean, let's call it what it is. It's amazing they sit there and say they don't use terrorism. And I go back and saying this, and I mean, you can agree or disagree, it's completely up to you. But I just think whenever a white person does something of a terrorist nature, that they don't want to label them as terrorists. I don't understand it. What more do you need to say this man was a white terrorist? Oh, we don't know his motives. It didn't matter. He had whatever motive it was enough for him to build a bomb in his RV, to drive it down to the AT&T building here in Nashville, and decide to detonate. Now, just because he might have actually had a recording saying, a bomb is placed here, please evacuate. He might have been playing music. He might have, reported shots to get police down here. It doesn't take away from the fact that it was a terrorist act. And yet, for the life of me, I cannot understand why in the world, whenever a white person does something that a person of color may do, they're never labeled as a terrorist. Timothy McVeigh, to this day, has still never been labeled as a terrorist. And for what he has done, I am surprised. Correct me if I'm wrong in that thinking, but I've yet to ever hear that. But again, it's almost empty. But also, his girlfriend at the time also sat there and did call him out, saying, I think he may be building a bomb in his RV, and they said that they couldn't search because they were not given due diligence. Keep in mind, at the time of the Patriot Act, that they could have really just cited probable cause, like they usually do when they want to break into something. They chose not to. And could it have been that he was white? I'm liable to lean to that. But at the same time, it's one of those things, like I said before, he was a suicide bomber. Let's call him what he is. He is a white terrorist, which again has been said many times by the FBI and various other federal authorities that pretty much white supremacy and white terrorism are the greatest threats to American culture. They don't want to say it. But moving right along, guys, I did want to play this about minimum wage just because how are we now in 2021 and the minimum wage is still $7.30? But I just thought this was cool, and I think y'all might get the same perspective I did from it.
Isn't fun. The work is hard, and then you also have to work with the knowledge that your boss is literally prevented by law from paying you less money, even if they wanted to. But there isn't just one minimum wage. There's actually a whole tangled mess of them throughout the country. Yes, you have the national one, it's $7.25, and it's been that since 2009. But across the country, states and cities and counties have chosen to raise their minimum wage higher than the national one. So in places like Seattle and 2019, New York City, the minimum wage is up to $15 an hour. That's the highest. But then you go to New Hampshire, and you can make as little as $7.25 an hour. As of 2017, 39% of the country lives in a place where the federal minimum wage is the floor. The other 61% live in places where it's been raised higher. The divide between those two worlds is growing larger and larger. And we know that the minimum wage is and will probably always be one of the most controversial topics in economics. On one side, you have people saying it needs to be raised because if you raise it, it'll help lower income workers make more money. Then you have opponents saying that raising the minimum wage will actually lead to lower employment, and in the end, workers will make less money. You've heard these arguments before. So let's look into it. How have minimum wage increases actually affected those making the lowest wages? A recent study came out by the Economic Policy Institute that found that between 2013 and 2017, places that have seen minimum wage increases saw low-end wages boosted by 5%. In states that haven't raised the minimum wage, the increase was less than half of that. The same study also showed that the increase boosted the wages of women in the bottom 10th percentile of workers by 5%. That's compared to less than the 1% in states that hadn't raised the wage. That makes sense considering that women are disproportionately represented in low-wage jobs. That's also true for people of color. And it's not just the increased wages themselves that matter. It's also how those increases are coming to be. Right now, the federal minimum wage number is fixed. It's been stuck at $7.25 for about a decade. And because inflation exists, the minimum wage actually gets weaker and weaker every year that it isn't raised. So that $2009 is only worth 86 cents now. Here's a chart of the actual dollar amount of the minimum wage since its beginning in the 30s. Now here's a chart for the inflation-adjusted number. We can see that right now, when you account for inflation, the minimum wage is actually worth less than it was 60 years ago. So to actually raise the minimum wage, Congress has to proactively pass a law and the president has to sign it. And while minimum wage increases are broadly popular, politically recently, that hasn't been the case. President Obama spent his entire term trying in vain to raise the minimum wage to no avail. The alternate is to treat the minimum wage like Social Security and automatically increase it to match inflation. And over the last decade, a number of cities and states have decided to do just that. Right now, 18 states and Washington, D.C. have or are planning on indexing their minimum wages to inflation. So with each passing year, the 39% and the 61% grow further and further apart.
Okay. And pretty much what he means by that, like I said before, it's interesting about the minimum wage because, like I said before, and I know I said 7.30, it's actually 7.25, so sorry about that, but it's true. I mean, yes, you're right. In places like Seattle and like New York, you are looking at $15 an hour for minimum wage, and if you're in my home state of Tennessee, it's still $7.30. It's still $7.25. And I've never understood that because as inflation and production rates and our GDP has increased, our minimum wage hasn't increased. So I don't understand. Like I said before, as the man pointed out, the argument with is if you increase the minimum wage, it lowers the ability to hire more people. You said the same thing about Obamacare. That if Obamacare wasn't taken down, it would lead to lower employment. Obviously, it didn't. It actually increased employment. It actually lowered costs for a lot of people that got on Obamacare. At the same time, lower the cost for those that have existing conditions and who used to get really just who usually just got skiffed by insurance companies for paying more just to be covered. So again, guys, I still say this. I said this last year. I'm going to say this again. When it comes to the minimum wage, the only way to fix it is to increase it. I mean, we got to go, to match inflation. And I know last year, if you wanted to increase the minimum wage to match inflation, the minimum wage should currently sit at $23 and some change. I mean, yeah, $15 is cool, but we need to do exactly that. I mean, we need to retroactively make minimum wage starting out at $23 an hour. That's how you fix things. And a lot of people are saying, well, why we should do that? I said, because nowhere in the United States right now could you really afford on a minimum wage job, could you afford a two-bedroom apartment, an apartment in general, or to eat, or to have groceries, or to get a car, or things of that nature. A minimum wage job, which is supposed to be designed to be able to still sustain life, is unable to do so. Even more so at $7.25 an hour. Are you kidding? You wouldn't be able to. So again, increasing the minimum wage to $23, I think it was like $23.85 or something like that, would be the best route. But again, like I said before, it has to go through Congress, and we're gonna see, because Biden and Harris talked about raising the minimum wage. Hopefully they will with the Congress they've been given, because as the man pointed out, Barack Obama tried to do the same thing when he was president, but he was facing a House and a Senate that was pretty much against him. Which is usually what every black man has to face when everything's against you. But moving right along, guys, there is another story I wanted to cover about the coronavirus, where a hospital right now in Indiana is facing a backlash over a patient's treatment, and which unfortunately, well, I'll just play the video.
This is the second worst day here at IU North. Yesterday, a doctor wanted to send me home. You know, at that time, I'd only received 2 treatments of the remdesivir. He said, you don't need it. You're not even short of breath. I said, yes, I am. Then he went on to say, you don't qualify. I must have, because I've gotten 2 treatments. And then he further stated, you should just go home right now. And I don't feel comfortable giving you any more narcotics. I was in so much pain from my neck. My neck hurt so bad. I was crushed. He made me feel like I was a drug addict. And he knew I was a physician. I don't take narcotics.
Now, for all those that have never seen that before, that was actually Dr. Suzanne Moore, who was actually diagnosed with COVID, and the coronavirus. Was at an Indian hospital being treated, in which they did send her home. Of course, she passed away, unfortunately, days later, as they tried to get her to another hospital. Indiana Hospital, IU Health North, is actually the hospital is the hospital in hot water right now, because the CEO tried to do the blame the victim statement. I guess the blame the victim approach, just because they described Dr. Suzanne Moore as a complex patient, and that because she was a physician, meaning that she was a knowledgeable patient, may have intimidated the nursing staff. I'm sorry on this. That was the CEO's comment. That because Dr. Moore was a physician, and her being a knowledgeable patient, she intimidated the nursing staff. Where? I'm sorry. I've always heard the saying, doctors make the worst patients. But again, if she is a physician, that means she is aware of how the hospital works. I doubt she gets intimidated by nursing staff. Because the one thing I will sit there and say about this, that again, I can't fault black people. I can't fault black people when it comes to their feeling of healthcare. I cannot fault them for that, because you see stories like this. Black women who have been going to doctors have been saying that they haven't been given the same fair treatment as a white woman. I have seen it, and I cannot argue with it, because it's so very true. That yes, she probably could. Yes, Dr. Morgenstern could probably still be living right now had she been treated differently. I cannot argue that, because it's amazing. Like I said before, I have seen firsthand that how some black women are treated, and some black women will have some hesitation about going to the doctor, and that's why I keep saying. I can't argue. I argue a lot of stuff. Ask my girlfriend. I argue about a lot of stuff. I can't argue this. It's the truth. It's just that when it comes to the treatment of black people in the health field, it is a little hard to decimate that point of view, because it is so true. And even more so, that woman could still, and that doctor could still be alive today had she been treated differently. There's just no answer to that. And I understand right now with the way coronavirus is, and that ICUs across the countries are at full capacity. Even some are actually doing some tent ICUs. It doesn't excuse or pass by on the fact that she should have been treated better, way better than what she was getting. And now, unfortunately, another life was lost just because of a doctor's negligence, and that's truly sad. What is also sad is that we also did have another police shooting over the holiday. I should say over the holiday period, and this one, like I said, it might be a little bit graphic for viewers.
This morning, and the city's mayor says the officer should be fired. Officials released video of the incident that sparked outrage in the community. Officer Adam Coy did not turn on his body cam until after Tuesday's shooting. The silent video shows the dead man, 47-year-old Andre Hill, holding only a cell phone. Jeff Pegues has a story, and we warn you, the video we're about to show you is disturbing.
Body cam footage from Officer Adam Coy shows him approaching an open garage. Andre Hill is inside and walks toward the officer with a cell phone in his left hand. His other hand is not visible. Within seconds, Officer Coy shoots and Hill collapses. All this was captured via the body cam's pre-record function. 60 seconds of video without audio. It's at this point that Coy turned on his camera.
Put your hands out to the side. Hands out to the side now!
Hill lay for more than 6 minutes without aid, a violation of police policy. He was later pronounced dead at the hospital.
To see him lying in the driveway, minute after minute after minute, with no attempt to render aid, and that is a stunning disregard for life, and in this case, black life.
It all began when a neighbor called police early Tuesday to report a suspicious vehicle allegedly repeatedly being turned on and off, a non-emergency call. According to investigators, no weapon was recovered at the scene. The mayor says Hill was a guest at the home. A review of Officer Coy's personnel file shows more than 36 complaints filed against him since 2002, including use of force. All but a few were marked unfounded or not sustained. It's not clear from the files if any sustained complaints involved use of force. Following Hill's shooting, Coy has been relieved of his duties and ordered to turn in his badge and gun while the investigation continues. Hill's sister, Shauna Barnett, shared her thoughts online. "My brother was snatched away from me. Now I and my family will be there for him and other murdered victims to take up this plight that our culture has painfully endured for years." For CBS This Morning, Jeff Pegues.
And that's sad. Not only more sad because, like I said before, with the use of body cams, and like I said before, that itself should be just criminal. Because simple fact of the matter, his cam was muted, and I have been saying this about body cams on police officers. They cannot be altered. I think that once a body cam is a police officer and they go on duty, it should automatically start filming everything. and that if they tamper with it, or if they try to turn it off, or if they try to mute it in any way, at that point, that should be automatic firing. To me, that should be zero tolerance. It should be zero tolerance for me that if you got a body cam on, that actually basically just keeps you honest, and it keeps whoever you're dealing with honest. That, for the simple fact of the matter, that should be your lifeline. But again, an officer who shot an unarmed individual and then did not respond to them or give them necessary aid within 2 or 3 minutes, he was, again, like I said, the body cam was on, but no audio until, he's on the ground, and then he tries to sit there and say, well, hands up, but it's already been done. At the same time, how else do you sit there and justify this? Again, this is another name that we have to add, another name that unfortunately we are adding to a growing list. But even more so, an officer who messes with his body cam, to me, should be fired. Or if he's a part of any case that he's a part of is tainted, should be thrown out. That's the way it should be. But for the simple fact of the matter is, it'll be interesting to see what they do with this guy, because aside from him turning in his badge and his gun, this is almost another. It's another Tamir Rice. It's another Ahmaud Arbery. It's another Breonna Taylor. It just keeps growing, and that's why I'm sitting there saying there has to be more to be done. But that, like I said, don't not get too me into that, because like I said before, it just bugs me that you would think at this point there'd be more things toward police, but let's be honest, they seem to get more protection than the victims themselves. But last thing I got, guys, next last thing I got, because I got 2 more stories before we get to our feel good segment. This video, like I said, if you've probably seen this story itself about an iPhone is still crazy to me. It really is.
Shows the shocking moment when a woman tackles the teenage son of a prominent black musician after wrongly accusing the boy of stealing her phone. Released overnight by the New York City Police Department, the surveillance video shows the woman rush 14-year-old Keon Harold Jr. in the Arlo Hotel on Saturday.
No, I'm not letting him walk away with my phone!
Initial video of the heated confrontation, posted on Instagram by Keon's outraged father, quickly went viral earlier this week.
Get my phone back! I cannot not have my phone!
Get your Harold, speaking at a rally Wednesday with civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump, said he and his son were the victims of racial profiling.
And I can't even come downstairs in New York City, prime New York City, and just go get brunch without being attacked and wrongfully accused of something.
The famed trumpeter and Crump are calling on the district attorney to bring assault and battery charges against the woman, plus a civil rights investigation into the Arlo Hotel.
The idea of trauma goes above any charge that could ever be had. I want my son to grow up whole.
The NYPD now asking for the public's help in locating the woman shown in the video. The woman withholding her identity, talking to CNN over the phone on Tuesday, claiming she was the victim, and had also asked another individual in the hotel about her phone before running into Harold. Police say the woman's phone was found in an Uber and that the case is not being investigated as a bias incident. NBC News was unable to make contact with the woman and does not know what happened before or after the video. The hotel in a statement has apologized to the Harolds and added that while a manager on duty did quickly call police, more should have been done to de-escalate the situation as the search continues for the woman seen in the video.
Yeah, crazy, right? That a woman can just accuse a young man of having her iPhone. And even to the point where she confronted and tried to physically get the phone away from the boy. Father did right. The father did right in recording the whole thing, because imagine if that evidence wasn't there, how quickly this story would have turned. Because, again, a lot of the story doesn't make sense about this woman. How do you immediately assume that this young man has your phone? Number one. Number two, if he truly had your phone, why didn't you just call it? I mean, that would have easily answered that question. And number three, why was she so certain that this young man had her phone? That was always the thing that bothered me as I watched that video and other videos about that same incident. But even more so, the hotel themselves, like I said before, it's amazing that if I was the father of that son and that hotel we're staying in, oh, they will be getting sued. And if I was a lawyer, and I say this best, lawyers love these types of cases, especially I'm not saying these are slam dunk cases, but they pretty much are. And what I mean by that is the simple fact of the matter is, let's look at the scenario. You are coming down the steps of a hotel. This white woman accuses your son of taking her phone. Of course, it comes to find out much later, after she does all that hooting and hollering and just trying to make a scene, that the phone that she supposedly thought was gone was actually somewhere else. And the hotel manager is telling the young man, well, let me just see the phone. You're not the police. You can't do anything. You can't do anything within the realm of a law enforcement officer. If you're a hotel manager, you should de-escalate the situation and said, well, let's just call it. Let's just call the number. If it rings, then we know. But if it doesn't ring, then you owe these people an apology. But again, he didn't. He actually sided with the woman and really accosted the young man about the phone that was his. So like I said, for the simple fact of the matter, guys, if I was a lawyer, which I'm pretty sure that jazz musician and his son are seeking right now, if I was a lawyer and I came to them and I said, look, we could sue this hotel right now for discrimination, and the hotel would pay. They would. Ask any first year law student. This is probably the biggest slam dunk case ever, because all the lawyer is going to do for that young man, his father, and say, how much do you want? Because trust me, that hotel is not only going to fire that manager, they're going to pay all this to make this go away. I guarantee this will never see court. I guarantee they will do a settlement because they want this to go away. Now, as for the woman, I'm surprised because she stayed at the hotel, which means her information is with said hotel. Why are we helping the police try to help find this woman when the police can just get a court order, go back to the hotel and say, hey, we need that woman's information. You have it. Same as anywhere else. All law enforcement needs is a court order to basically go to the hotel and simply say, hey, we need this person's information. They're involved in one of our investigations. Here's our court order. Please release the information. Done. But it's amazing where, again, it's a little hard to identify somebody when they're wearing a hat and a mask. Twitter is usually good about this kind of stuff, but that's going to be on the difficult side. I'm just going to point that out. And I do mean the difficult side. So, like I said, we'll still follow that story as far as where it goes. But again, the father said it right. I want my son to be whole. And I can't blame him for that. Because again, guys, this is all we owe. For anybody of color, they understand this. That those incidents change you. Those incidents change your outlook on things, change your life, change the way you view the world. I don't mean to say we get used to it, but there's not been one person of color out there who's, I won't say innocent of not seeing these things, but let's just say, like I always tell everybody else, I said, when they say, oh, this never happened to me, I just tell them, oh, well, then your boat's coming up. Your ticket's coming up. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just that, unfortunately, because the way that our society is, we're all bound to have a ride on the discrimination express train. It doesn't seem to miss anybody. That's all I'm saying. But with that though, it's just crazy that what other things did she have to go off of? Oh, I asked somebody else. And the funny part that she called into CNN try to say she was the victim. I didn't see the boy try to tackle you. You try to tackle him, but you're the victim, right? But moving right along, guys. Our last story before we get to our feel good segment. Pharmacist arrested that was accused of destroying more than the 500 Moderna vaccine doses. So a physician in Milwaukee has been accused of tampering and causing destruction of more than 550 doses of the Moderna vaccine. which now they're saying that same pharmacist could possibly be fired, and it also can be brought up on charges of first-degree recklessly endangering safety, adulterating a prescription drug, and criminal damage to property. Of course, they did not release this individual's name, but apparently somebody which was actually booked into the sheriff's office may have actually matched that description. But they never actually said in the story why he actually did it. So again, that's the kind of part that bothers me. It's just that this physician left. Of course, these vaccines have to be stored at certain temperatures. I think it's, for most vaccines, I think it's like 30 to 35 degrees Fahrenheit. But again, it's the weird thing about this is just that because of how sensitive these vaccines are, there are multiple regulations and procedures that these people follow, and this person didn't. They actually left them outside of the fridge. They actually left them outside the storage area, and because they were left out more than 12 hours, they were just no longer useful or ineffective. And unfortunately, some people actually did receive those injections thinking that they were safe, and they've been notified and actually are being monitored because, like I said, once those vaccines stay out longer than they can actually be refrigerant, it's pretty much a placebo. It's useless at that point. But I'll actually follow that case because I actually want to see the reason why. Because again, it doesn't actually give a reason why the pharmacist did what he did. But I'm pretty sure there's going to be a manifesto coming eventually. But that's really all the stories that we got, guys. So we're going to go into our Feel Good News segment. With our Feel Good News segment, like I said, always on How the Frack We Got Here, we do cover a lot of stories about doom and gloom and things of that nature, but we also understand it's the weekend. It is the second day of the first year of 2021. I'm sorry, that did not sound right. It's the second day of the beginning of the year of 2021. I'm sorry, 2020 still got that hold on me, and I'm just like, it's just, on a side note, did 2020 feel more like 10 years than 1 year? I'm just saying. But like I said, on our Feel Good News segment, we always try to find some stories that are uplifting, encouraging, and things of that nature. And I think I might have done so with a few of them, especially this one about this group, these brothers that have, well, let's just say, created quite the business.
Brothers in Georgia have become masters at making money and sharing their wealth with others. CBS's Mark Strassman introduces us.
I am the CEO and founder, and Noah is the president, newly promoted.
Small businessman Triandos Thornton and his theatrical little brother Noah. They sell bow ties.
My idea was to motivate kids to see that style meets purpose.
You need to be in the moment and look good in the moment.
Yes.
Like you do right now.
Yes. Then you take the right side over left side.
The third grader started his bow tie company when he was 5. Annual sales today pushing $50,000.
And my plans for the future are gonna be like getting a bow tie store.
He's learned life skills.
Look up, no, look down all the time.
Any parent can appreciate.
If someone shakes your hand, shake firmly, of course, before COVID times.
Their parents help, but this is kid business.
So they're involved in the entire process.
If there's a disagreement about business, who wins, mom and dad or the CEO?
The CEO.
CEO wins.
But that's only when it comes to business, because the household rules are still mom and dad.
But wait, there's more.
So I run my own food and toy drive.
Profits help needy families. UPS donated a truckload of supplies. 2,000 bow tie drivers learned style meets purpose.
Will you give me a bow tie lesson?
Yes.
Okay, show me how to do it.
Okay.
Anyone wants what Triandos sells.
No, it's under, like this.
Bow ties give you superpowers of confidence.
Think we look good?
Yeah, I think we look good.
Mark Strassman, CBS News.
Now, I'm sorry, third grade, and he's already got a business. I'm amazed. Not only amazed about these two young men, but I'm gonna go and say it. I said it's they had to learn from somewhere. If you have solidified parents, and you can tell the father was like, oh, they're involved in every process of it. And the mother's like, oh yeah, they can still do business, but when it comes to the house, I still run the show. But I love the fact that he just has that instilled in him already. and I keep saying this about children because I'm not a teacher, although I do like teaching children things that I know. But if you get them while they're young, and you can get them and really learning and keep that instilled in them, they can do great and wondrous things. And like I said, if I was that dude, I'll be honest with you. If I was, I always keep on saying one day I'll be a parent, but to sit there and say that, my son or my daughter does stuff like this, oh, I will be bragging my ass off. I will be bragging. I'll be sitting there saying, you know what? My son's a CEO and he ain't in his growth spurt yet. You think I'm kidding? I know. Ooh, let my son or my daughter do something great. I will be bragging my. Ooh, I'm gonna be that. I already know I'm gonna be that type of parent. Anyway, we do got a little bit more stories, guys. Like I said, of course, from this one about the author, which I did not know about this author, but I love the fact of what she's done.
Showdown, now knocking it out of the park since she won big on GMA3.
I've decided to bless you all with $5,000.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Prior to the pandemic, I had Little Black Girl out and it was doing really well. And had already been in the process of writing Little Black Boy. But when the pandemic hit, it really hurt the whole world. More people said, okay, you did something for the girls. Will you ever do something for the boys? So I'm really excited that just a few weeks ago, I came out with Little Black Boy, which is the companion book. And I just believe that my book series really highlights the contributions African Americans have made in American culture and really encourages little Black children to leave their mark in the future. Since winning GMA3 Second Act Showdown, my business has grown to a new level. I've actually created an LLC called Breezy Publishing, which I'm putting out my books under. Little Black Boy was the first book under that umbrella. We have tons of products like our book and mask bundles and different items that children will love to go with their books. Overall, during this pandemic, I cannot complain. I know people who have lost so much and who have gotten sick, and me and my daughter still have our health, we still have a home. The main thing I learned during this pandemic is how strong I am. If there's something I want, I'm going to find a way to achieve it, and the pandemic really showed me how much of resilience is in me.
That's a great update.
The inspiring progress report from
And I thought that was cool too. The fact that she did actually, because I did not know about those books, but now that I know about them, which they are actually available really anywhere. So like if you're like me and you've been cooped up and you've been using Amazon a lot, you can definitely find the books there. But I always love books that actually help to, allow them to see, because I always say before, and representation matters. I cannot stress that enough. Especially when you're seeing stuff to where, like I said, you see books out there, but you never see books that actually reflect the kid that's reading it. And so, Little Black Boy and Little Black Girl, I actually did went ahead and order those books for my niece and nephews, just because I think that'll be very beneficial toward them. So, the last story that I got, guys, because you know me, if you've watched my podcast, you know I love lottery stories. Let's be honest, we all play lottery. We all take a scratch off. We all take a Powerball or Mega Millions, and if you haven't, you really need to, because both of them are really up right now, and you never know. 2021 could be your year that, like I said before, if you win the lottery, it's life changing, especially about the amounts out there. But I have to give actually my girlfriend Kelly credit for this, because I said girlfriend Kelly credit. I don't know how I messed that up because it's nowhere near alliteration. But anyway, she pointed out this story to me, and I thought this was pretty cool as well, where a preschool teacher who was laid off after 20 years won $250,000 scratch off. Of course, this individual was laid off in September amid the coronavirus pandemic, and then, of course, he lost his father to it. So one morning he decided to go to the store and bought a scratch-off ticket, and then he didn't win on the West. He didn't win on one, but then he scratched the second one off. And as he said, and he quoted, he fell to his knees at the gas pump. and said that he plans, he plans taking the money to use it on his family. He wants to save for his daughter's education and buy a new home to pass down to his loved ones. And I like that idea, but I like the fact of just, some people just, really deserving a win. And let's be honest, after 2021, we all deserve a win. So I love seeing stories like that where I wouldn't know how I would react. I still say this to this day. I don't know how I would react if I wake up the next day or if I get a scratch-off ticket and I happen to see that you won and just the effect. I just hope to God I just don't pass out. That's just me. Fall to my knees, I can do that. Sit there and say, thank you, Jesus. And, I could do that too. I just don't want to faint because a black dude fainting is never good. That's how you get attention to yourself. But again, I just like hearing stories about that and the fact that he wants to save for his daughter's education and that he wants to, pass down generational things to his family. And I was like, dude, that's the move. That to me above all else is truly the move when it comes to breaking generational curses and passing down wealth. And I've always said this beforehand, if you have land, if you have homes, stocks, if you have things that literally generate residual income or value, never sell them. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I mean, if you have land, don't sell it. If you have stocks, don't sell them. If you have priceless heirlooms that are, of course, worth their money, don't sell them. Honestly, this is what people who are rich have done for generations, is pass on their wealth to their families and so forth. So, if you come into a stable load of money, or if you come into some land, or if you come into some homes, or anything of that nature, if you can break that curse, because I always say it first about breaking these generational curses, pass it on down the road. Because that's why hopefully me and my future wife. I'm not gonna say her name because I'm not gonna try to put that on her right now. But it's like I hope that when I'm down the road with her, that we have homes and we have things that we can pass on to our kids, and they go from there. When you can do that, that sets up future generations for great things. That's just my opinion. But with that being said, before I embarrass myself anymore, that's pretty much going to be it for this podcast. Like I said, we are back after our hiatus. Before I do really get down the road, I do want to thank everybody that watched, that liked, that shared, that started watch parties. I certainly thank you for all of that. Sorry I didn't get to your comments as much as I could today. I was kind of dealing with a little bit of technical difficulty, but hey, we made it through. But before I do get out of here, I do need to do some shameless plugging. I will start my buddy Vaughn, who was also somewhere around here, but he's probably got stuff that he's doing right now. So Big BZA who will also be returning from his podcast very soon. But you can definitely look him up on Facebook at Big BZA and be a friend. He's friendly-ish. And once you're friends, let's try that again. And once you're friends with him, just go ahead and go to his Facebook page, go to videos, and you'll be able to see his podcast from here. And it looks like he's got a lot since I've been here last time. So I'll try to filter out where I can actually find what I'm needing to. I'll start first with the VSTs, I just call the Intercast. Now, what is the VSTs? Well, basically, it's a news podcast. That news can be music, video games, or trailers. But because Vaughn considers himself a big-ass kid, because I actually consider myself a big-ass kid, we do handle our responsibilities as men and things of that nature. But hey, we also like to wind down and enjoy the things that we loved as kids. And so therefore, that's what he talks about, especially trailers. That man is the king of weird trailers. I cannot tell you for the simple fact of the matter that sometimes he found some trailers that have got me interested. And then he sometimes finds trailers where I'm just like, how? Especially the one about that one movie. Now I can't even think. I think it was crap. I have to go find that movie again. That had Will Wheaton in it, which I did really actually like watching, and now I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, he actually does find weird trailers and stuff. Like I said, interactive show just like mine, so definitely give that a like-see. The other one he does have is Random as Fuck. What is Random as Fuck? It is the pool of ratchets we sometimes dip our toes into to take a break from life and have a chuckle. Some videos make you think, some videos make you cry. Always to a theme. Still my favorite from November 10th of last year was the Fuck Donald Trump, which is still funny to me because he found videos related to Donald Trump, such as the Trump supporters sitting outside the election office praying for them to stop counting the votes. Yes, that really did happen, but it's definitely a show that is definitely entertaining and funny, and also plan to reset your weeks on Tuesdays. I'm not sure if he's still going to do it on Tuesdays, but eventually he will let you guys know when he's doing that. He also has the Rhythmness Music Podcast. What is Rhythmness? If you've ever heard Vaughn talk about music, and trust me, he talks about music a lot. Reason being because he is a music connoisseur, so him and myself and others will come together and actually listen to new music that we found or he's found, and just give our opinions on it. And we are all different on the musical scale, so he also, like I said, differences in musical taste lead to great conversations, in my opinion. So definitely watch that as well. And finally, he does have his pop-up show, and I call it a pop-up show because, well, if you ever heard Vaughn before, he is a beat maker such as this. I'm actually impressed that he actually cleaned up his desk, but then again, like I always said, a mess is the sign of a genius. But yes, Vaughn is a beat maker, and he actually likes making beats, and that's what Funkin' Around is. It's basically his creative process of how he makes a beat till he actually completes it. And like I said before, he is a musical genius, likes to play with the keys. And I keep thinking that one day he might actually go back into the pond and start going back into going to beats full time. But it definitely is fun to watch his entire process of going from there. So all of his shows can be found under his Facebook page at Big BZA Dot. Definitely look him up, Big BZA Dot, on social medias. As he says, all his podcasts will be returning soon. But please feel free to check out his page to know when exactly he'll be doing just that. Now, aside from me, guys, before I do go on along this, I do have to sit there and say I do have a few podcasts on my own. I will say every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. we will be back with the Burned Out Podcast. It is my storytelling podcast of stories about my job. Anybody knows that I do work in IT and I do work with the public and a lot of special individuals. So I try to actually make it fun and make it funny. And hopefully if you find it funny, then mission accomplished. But if not, then yes, I am talking about you. You need to lighten up. Of course, every Saturday, as you see now from 10 a.m. to noon, is the How the Frack We Got Here podcast. And a little bit later tonight, yes, we will be back with an Off-Limits podcast. The podcast that definitely does go there because we talk about the subjects nobody wants to talk about, that shied away from, that you don't want people in your church to know that you talk about. Well, yes, we talk about it all because we do believe that if we do talk about it and we do find some consensus, then we can move forward as a people because we have to stop doing this whole thing of you can't talk about that, simply put, because it'll offend somebody. Newsflash. Everybody gets offended. It's what you learn from it that's the difference. And of course, every Sunday from 7 to 9 p.m., we will be back with the Get Bit podcast. That is my video game podcast that I cover video games, that I cover superhero television shows, that I cover anime, that I cover comics, and even sports, like including wrestling. For a lot of us, that's still real to us because I still enjoy wrestling, and hopefully, if you've never seen an episode of wrestling, if you've never seen wrestling or sports entertainment, then you definitely should because it is one of the very few things that has the greatest performers in the world. In which I know tomorrow I will go over Cyberpunk and the reason why it's going to remain in the graveyard for a little while, and of course new games that are coming out as well, but we will cover that tomorrow. We will cover that tomorrow, so 9 p.m. So again, the link that I have for this show is directly at the bottom, so if you just copy and paste that into your browser, it will take you to our YouTube page to where you'll be able to see every How the Frack We Got Here podcast I've done thus far. All of my shows do have their own Facebook or YouTube pages. So whether on Facebook or YouTube, you can look them up by their names. You can look them up by simply typing in the Burned Out Podcast, How the Frack We Got Here, the Off-Limits Podcast, and Get Bit, that is GITBIT, to see every podcast that I've done this far. So hopefully, like I said, within the new year, we will see some new changes. But aside from that, some things still remain the same as we said at the end of this. First and foremost, yes, we are in 2021, but COVID-19 is still real. Please wear a mask. Please avoid large crowds if you have to. Only go out if you have to. I understand that we're being cooped up and things of that nature, but honestly, this virus will not go away until we start following the right things to do. We can't keep screaming America and personal rights. We need to help those because, like I said before in the previous news, we are already currently sitting at 345,000 plus deaths. We need to lower that. We need to actually do better. We need to do better. ICUs across the country are at 100% or more. We need to do better. And at the same time, like I said, it doesn't hurt to actually think of others when you go out because you yourself may not be sick, but you still can carry it to where someone else can be affected by it. So simply put, wear a mask, avoid large crowds, and just think of others. Be kind. It's not that fucking hard. Aside from that, guys, like I said, if you see a nurse, a doctor, nurse's aide, doctor's aide, environmental people that work in the hospitals, simply say thank you. They are not given enough for what they've done. If I was them, I'd still be lobbying for student loans to be completely wiped out, but that's just me. But they don't actually get enough for what they don't actually get enough credit for what they do. So simply saying thank you does go a long way. And also for the essential workers out there, please be kind to them. Please be kind. And again, say thank you. I'm talking about those that work in the retail and fast food, gas station, grocery store attendants, truck drivers, those that work in UPS, DHL, United States Postal Service, FedEx, and warehouses like Amazon. Simply put, they are not given enough, especially since this last year of all this holiday shopping that was done, especially in the logistics side, and they are still filtering that out. Simply say thank you because, again, they're not given a lot for what they do. Aside from that, guys, like I said before, just honestly be safe and be kind to each other because, like I said, we are in a new year. Let's make this right, as we will do with these podcasts. And like I said on How the Frack We Got Here, it's all about informing you. We are not about trying to persuade you. We're not trying to change your mind. We are simply doing what the news stations of old used to do. We used to just turn news stations of old since the 1920s have always simply informed you. And that's what we try to do. We want to inform you so you can make up your own mind. And from there, an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one. Because an uninformed community got us Trump. An informed community got us Biden and Kamala Harris, who will probably spend the first term cleaning up Trump's 4 years of destruction. I'm just saying. With that being said, guys, I've been Will. This has been How the Frack We Got Here. Again, thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful weekend as we recover from New Year's. Aside from that, guys, be kind to each other. That's all I'm asking you to do. Be kind and be peaceful. It's too easy to be violent. Peace.